Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video we are transitioning out of the style portfolio. We're leaving poetry for now, and as you know we're starting to read the essays from Barbara Holland's Endangered Pleasures. The first one we have today is Naps. We're going to look at Naps specifically as almost a door that will help us transition from the poems we read in the style portfolio, as well as the style portfolio skills we practice, into the next assignment. And we're going to start by looking at naps and identify where Barbara Holland is using the very same style portfolio skills that you've been practicing. Just as a first step at seeing that those style portfolio skills weren't just to help you write isolated descriptions of your topic, but that they're going to help you write and generate content and generate examples and even definitions for your argument about your topic in this essay. So I want to walk you through my own identification of some of the style portfolio skills in NAPS, but you should do this on your own as well. Not just with NAPS, but with the other 5 essays we'll read from Barbara Holland that you can always be aware of and see where she is using the very same skills we started our class with. And so that's going to be our first door or bridge between the two assignments. And then we're going to look at NAPS to identify rhetorical situation, to identify who her audience is and this particular context that she's developing in the shape of a problem, and how she also establishes who she is as a speaker. And then last but not least, purpose. That is the rhetorical situation, those 4 elements. And so we won't do an in-depth analysis of NAPS today, but we will use it as a bridge and also to talk about a key foundational element of your essay, and that is that rhetorical situation. So I'm going to switch over first to NAPS. I have it PDF'd here so we could look at it together. I just want to point out where I see the style portfolio skills being used in this essay. The ones that I point out are not all of the instances of the style portfolio skills, they're just a couple. And you can, again, continue to look at this on your own and see where these style portfolio skills are happening. And I'm probably going to just go to 1 or 2 places to see the style portfolio skills in action. So we're not even going to talk about what NAPS is about overall first. We're just going to go straight to this place in the essay that I love best. And it starts on the bottom of 38 and goes to the top of 39. So I'm going to read it and then talk about what style portfolio skills are being represented in this one paragraph. Barbara Holland says, "This leaves the rest of us lackeys bolt upright, toughing it out, trying to focus on the computer screen, from time to time snatching our chins up off our collarbones and glancing furtively around to see if we were noticed. The modern office isn't designed for privacy, and most of our cubicles have no doors to close, only gaps in the portable partitions. Lay our heads down on the desk at the appropriate hour, and we're exposed to any passing snitch who strolls the halls enforcing alertness. It's a wonder they don't walk around ringing bells and blowing trumpets from 1 till 3. American employers do not see the afternoon 40 winks as refreshing the creative well springs of mere employees. They see it as goofing off." One of my favorite paragraphs of not only this essay, but Barbara Holland's essays in general. And I think it's a great representation of the style portfolio skills. The first thing that I'll point out is that it is a perfect example of writing in detail with the physical senses. We talked about writing in physical detail to represent an idea or a feeling instead of directly stating it. So we said we could leave out any direct references to how we feel and let the details instead show it. And this is a good case of that. She's basically saying that the modern office worker is scared to take a nap. And that could have been the single statement that she made. It would have represented the idea that she was trying to capture and that she wanted her audience to see. But as we've talked about already, mere statement isn't something that an audience can see or sense or experience. So she has to put in the physical details. Here she creates a scene of an office, a very specific office with computer screens, with the cubicles, which she calls portable partitions. She talks about other people walking around and talks about even the sounds that they're making. So very much the details, physical senses are on display here. But at the same time, her details that focus and establish tone and attitude are very clear. She's trying to represent this fear without saying fear. So what does she do? She uses language like, oh, I can't highlight, so I'm just going to hover. She uses language like toughing, specifically verbs, if you remember, that the verbs carry a lot of the tone and the attitude. So she says toughing, trying, snatching, glancing furtively. She also says exposed. She uses the noun snitch. Snitch is also a verb. Here it's being used as a noun. And we just see in these, enforcing, in the verb choice, it's very clear that she's establishing a tone of fear or anxiousness or nervous alertness. And that's a perfect example of establishing tone through your word choice. So there we have the first two. If we just moved through the list, we would have to leave this paragraph. So we'll actually do that just to create consistency, and we'll move to imperatives because that was the third style portfolio skill that we practiced. But I will come back to this paragraph in a minute. A true imperative happens on page 40, and it comes in the form of an example. She's trying to give an example of the joys of napping, and she uses, as Philip Levine used, two instances of consider. And here at the beginning, at the top of the page, she says, consider the cat. And then she goes in to describe the cat and how it naps as an example of enjoyable sleep or enjoyable napping. And then she follows it up again with let us consider the cat and go to bed. So it's not just consider, it's a command to go to bed. So a couple instances there right away that we see imperatives at work. From there, we had metaphor. Well, the cat almost seems like a metaphor. It's actually an example. It's an example being used to describe napping, but we do have a couple true metaphors. Ones that represent an abstract idea or an abstract feeling with physical terminology. We see it in this one paragraph, this short paragraph, the second shortest paragraph of the essay, where she says, like skydiving, napping takes practice. The first few tries are scary. So she could have just said napping is scary, but instead she uses a metaphor to enhance the idea, that unknown sensation of napping that the reader has, and she compares it to skydiving and the fact that skydiving takes a first few tries before it's not scary any longer. There's more metaphors. We have this vampire movie. We have other things throughout. But again, I'm just pointing out a couple. It's up to you to continue to look through this essay and find some other instances of metaphor and imperative. After metaphor, we talked about syntax. I can go back to the first paragraph we discussed and see syntax on full display. The long sentence that starts with this leaves the rest of us lackeys bolt upright, all the way to see if we were noticed. It's an example of syntax, of splitting the second, if you remember that skill. It's a series of actions that represent a larger action. So it's from toughing, trying, snatching, glancing, and we have that representation of multiple verbs to specify a more general action. In that same paragraph, we also end with a very short sentence. They see it as goofing off. Very short sentence called emphasis. It has an emotional resonance. Here, the emotional resonance is the fear that the audience has about sleeping. They fear that they'll be seen as being lazy or goofing off. I don't recall off the top of my head if there is any specific telescoping in this paragraph. But the point is that we've already seen 2 instances of syntax skills at work in this paragraph. Again, it's up to you to look for the others. Lastly, we have repetition of sound, and I mean it's all over the place in this paragraph, starting with the T, rest, bolt, upright, toughing, it, out, trying, time, snatching, furtive, so on and so forth. So that is a little bit of alliteration, but also a little bit of consonants. And it's happening in other places here as well. She says portable partitions, gaps, privacy, appropriate, exposed, passing. It's no accident that she's repeating this language. And we know it's no accident that she's repeating the sound of P, because what she means by portable partitions is actually just cubicles. And that didn't have a P though, so she purposely described cubicles as portable partitions because it gave her the sound of the language that she was looking for. So there are our style portfolio skills. Again, do this on your own. Don't let your understanding of the purpose of the style portfolio skills end at mere description. By identifying where Barbara Holland's using the style portfolio skills, you're going to be able to better incorporate those style portfolio skills into your own essay. And you can look at any Barbara Holland essay that we're reading and find them all over the place. And that was just one example of style portfolios in this essay. I'm going to move away from this because that is the finish of the bridge between the style portfolio and the essay, just by seeing how we're going to put these details into action of an argument, and how the style portfolio skills are going to end up in the essay portion. But now I want to talk about the first and most important and foundational element of the In Defense of essay, and that is this idea of understanding your rhetorical situation. Understanding who your audience is. Understanding what about that audience, or what that audience thinks about your topic that is problematic. Why don't they like your topic? Why don't they enjoy your topic? How do they misunderstand your topic? How do they feel about it? And then also understanding from that place who you're writing to and what the problem is that they have with your topic. You're going to be able to identify a more specific purpose. We're also going to touch briefly on speaker, you, the speaker, and one skill that will help showcase you as a speaker at the very forefront of the essay. So these 4 elements are the rhetorical situation. And we're just going to talk about them and identify them in NAPS. We'll come back to NAPS in later videos when we're talking about the other Holland essays. But here's just a foundation for us to start from. So I'm going to pull up really quickly the reading I had you do from the Adios Strunk and White packet. I'm going to highlight the first paragraph of the problem-making section, and then use that to start our discussion of NAPS. So here we're told, does anyone really appreciate trigonometry before being startled by an engineering problem that requires trig as a solution? Do history students sincerely appreciate the United States system of checks and balances if they have no knowledge of the terror that exists in other countries where that system does not exist? Those are rhetorical questions. The answer is no. The writer says, an erudite writer can fail to first immerse readers in the complexity of problems. Biological, sociological, political, psychological, philosophical, historical, or aesthetic design problems. I'll add personal or societal or cultural to the list as well. Getting too quickly to answers, stymieing suspense, and depriving readers of an appreciation of those answers, which in turn makes the answers less memorable. Problem making is a strategy for immersing readers in the drama of a dilemma before delivering the solution. One of my favorite phrases from this paragraph is immersing readers in the drama of the dilemma. I think what this means is that the dilemma or the problem is so well described, and the reader has been invited in to experience, as if they were in the scene themselves, that drama of that dilemma, that they feel it, and in feeling it, they believe there's a dilemma that needs to be solved. If you can convince your reader that there's a problem that needs to be solved, you're that much more likely to convince them that your solution that you have to give them and your argument is what will fix that problem. So, immersing readers in the drama of the dilemma I like a lot, but I also like this phrase as something to avoid. Getting too quickly to answers. You have been taught, for the most part, to write a 5-paragraph essay. The first paragraph introduces a thesis, it introduces your argument, it introduces your answer from the very beginning of the essay, probably just a few sentences in. You've been told that this is good writing, that this is a well-structured essay, but it also is a representation of getting too quickly to an answer, getting too quickly to an argument before truly establishing who you're writing to, why you're writing to them, and what problem you're responding to. And so we are going to use this essay, the In Defense of Essay, to break that habit, break that history you have with being taught to write the 5-paragraph essay that jumps into a thesis too quickly. And we're going to practice from the very beginning what it means to develop a fully fleshed out problem-making section of an essay. So you can immerse your reader in the drama of a dilemma and before you give them a solution. So this is a language we're going to come back to again and again. And let's just look at how Barbara Holland does this. So problem making is going to be what we focus on first. Then we'll talk about audience, because the audience is with the problem is with the audience. And then we're also going to look at speaker and purpose and just touch on them really quickly to wrap up the rhetorical situation. So back to naps. So I'm going to point out a pivotal transition in this essay. And it's a transition, it's a part of this essay that divides the essay into two parts. It divides the essay into what we're calling the problem-making section, and it also then divides that from the solution section. And so I'm going to kind of just scroll and scroll and scroll all the way up until the end of 39. And it's good to note, even though my scan has kind of the pages side by side, that it's pretty much one full page, 2 full pages, and almost a third full page. So we'll say 2.5 pages of this first section that I'm talking about before we get this pivotal transition point. It's a transition point that says it's time to rethink the nap from both the corporate and the personal viewpoint. We're going to come back to this as a statement of purpose, but for now we're just going to look at it as a dividing point between everything that happens before it, which we'll call problem making, and everything that happens after it, which will be the writer's solution to the problem, which could also be known as Barbara Holland's purpose for writing the essay, and also her argument about naps and how it needs to be rethought. 2.5 pages. This is 2.5 pages of introduction of sorts, of identifying audience, of identifying problem before a purpose or even a thesis statement is made. This is very different than anything you've done before. Um, and we're going to use this NAP essay as an example of pushing ourselves to write a longer and longer introductory or problem-making section of our essay to break the habit of the 5-paragraph essay along the way. So, I'm saying that the first 2.5 pages are problem making. What is the problem? Well, the basic concept that Barbara Holland returns to over and over is that Americans are afraid of naps. She says it one time there, and she also uses the idea of fear here. In the metaphor I touched on earlier, the first few tries are scary. American Nap is even scarier. So the basic concept, the basic statement, the emotionally direct statement is Americans are afraid of naps. She's identifying how her audience thinks about naps or how they feel about naps as a foundation of the problem. Now, technically, that's all she is saying in the problem-making section. 3 sentences worth of statement about what the problem is. And yet she has 2.5 pages of detail, of description, of examples, of definitions of what that means. And this gives us an idea of how we're using the style portfolio skills throughout the In Defense of Essay, and particularly in the problem-making section. That you cannot just tell your audience there's a problem. You have to immerse them in the problem by inviting them into the scene, as we said with the style portfolio, inviting them into the environment, making them feel it, making them sense it, making them understand your attitude and their own attitude towards it with the language that you choose. And we get that all over these first 2.5 pages. She's just saying that we're scared of naps. She also goes on to add one other point about us feeling that they are not productive. She uses the word productive quite a few times in this essay. We're afraid of naps because we won't be productive. And so that's what we get for 2.5 pages. She convinces us, she doesn't just tell us, she convinces us that we are afraid of naps and that it's problematic. Now, how does she convince us? She kind of explains it, she describes it, she gives examples. Let's see. Find a specific place where we can look to how she develops this idea a little bit more. How about here? Just starting with the paragraph where she makes the claim about Americans being scared of naps. She goes on to say, in an example that she creates a scene, there we lie, visible and vulnerable on our daylit bed, ready to cut the strings and sink into the dark, swirling, almost sexual currents of the impending doze. But what will happen in our absence? Our stocks will fall, our employees will mutiny and seize the helm, our clients will tiptoe away to competitors. Even the housewife, taking advantage of the afternoon lull, knows at the deepest level of consciousness that the phone is about to ring. So one of the problems is not just told to us, but it is given to us through example, through specific fears that we have. We're afraid that our stocks will fall. We're afraid that our employees will mutiny and that our clients will go to competitors. The next paragraph goes into more detail about another problem, conveniency or even ability to have a place to sleep, but she describes it in great detail with specific detail about gym rooms, about how Japan has specific rooms that we can nap in, but America doesn't. She describes them. So these are a couple examples of how she uses the style portfolio skills to describe an environment that represents the problem. And it's the idea of using example and specific details in those examples that we want to take away most. Again, all over the place. You can see where she's developing this problem up until this point. Now, there's the question of who she's talking to. And that's where we're going to go next, because that will deepen our understanding of the audience, but also deepen our understanding of the problem, and show us that she gives her more opportunity. The more she specifies her audience, the more opportunity she has to develop the problem. So at the very beginning, she said Americans are afraid of naps. Here again, she says American nap is even scarier because it's unilateral. But these examples I just looked at, they start to tell us a little bit more about who the audience is. And we want to look at those details, those examples, to clarify the audience. So when she says our stocks will fall, our employees will mutiny, our clients will tiptoe away to competitors. When she's talking about CEOs and giant corporations, when she's talking about office workers who work in cubicles. These are the examples she's using to show that we're afraid of naps. But the specific examples have a consistent theme to them, that they are all people who work in corporate America. They're business men in particular. And we see that through the examples in the way she talks about the working man. But then she's also gives other examples about the housewife and sleeping at home. That was the first example that she started with up here. So the examples reveal who the audience is. She doesn't have to come out right and say, I'm writing to housewives and I am writing to corporate business workers. She can claim a general audience like American, but then through the examples specify the scenarios in which the audience becomes clear. And we see that here. We know that again with this statement of purpose, because she says corporate and personal. She's talking about the corporate audience and a personal audience. So that now covers, in this problem-making section up to this point, a problem and a specific audience who's experiencing that problem. Again, the problem is the way that the audience feels about the topic that she's writing about, but it's also about how she feels about her audience's feelings about the topic. Those both make up the problem she's addressing. The last two things I want to focus on is coming back to this statement of purpose, and then also talk about the speaker, and we'll end the video there. Statement of purpose for us in this essay is going to be very direct. It's going to be very clear, and it's going to work as a transition between the problem and the solution. This one is the most straightforward one you'll see in all 6 of the essays. She simply says, my audience has been thinking or feeling about naps one way, and she represents that way in the problem. And now it's time to rethink the nap in the way that she'll go on to describe to follow. She wants them to feel a different way about it and see it a new way. And the solution is getting them to feel and see it. So again, how does she do that? With those style portfolio skills, with the physical descriptions, inviting her audience into the scene, helping them feel the sensations of what it's like to nap. She does it all through detail, not through direct statement. She doesn't just say naps feel good. She shows us and makes us feel how they feel through her examples and through her details. But more importantly, we're just focusing here on the statement of purpose. So now we have audience, we have problem, we have purpose. The only thing we haven't looked at is speaker. We can talk about this in a number of ways, and we will throughout all of the 6 Barbara Holland essays we read. But I want to focus today on the idea of anecdote, which is a personal story that shows up in an essay. And we see it at the very beginning of this essay, and it represents and introduces us to the speaker. So before she gets into this problem of Americans are afraid of naps, she starts off with a story that's a representation of that very problem, or the tension that Americans have when it comes to napping. So she tells the story of her being in France with her friends and them not understanding that French men and women nap after lunch, and that they got into this trouble of being able to return the boat they rented, and they felt the emptiness of their environment, and so that she's showing us that they were concerned and uncertain. All of this is done through a story that introduces that there is a problem to be discussed. This is what anecdotes do best. Anecdotes are a perfect example of showing, not telling. It is a easy way to give a personal example of an experience of the problem itself. Now, you can use anecdotes in your solution section as well, but here she's using it to introduce the problem. She's basically introducing here that there's a problem with napping through this story that she's told. And so that introduces us to her a little bit. Here's what's key about the anecdote and thinking about speaker in your essay as well. She doesn't take a position in NAPS or any of her essays as being this super knowledgeable and kind of, what would we call him? Parent or authority figure who's pointing a finger at her audience and saying, oh, you have it so wrong. You have to listen to me because I know what's right. That creates a specific tone and a specific kind of character that some audiences might not want to listen to. If someone's pointing a finger at you and blaming you for having a problem with something, you might just walk away. You might not care to stop and listen to what they have to say. So instead, she uses anecdote in part. She uses a couple other skills as well, but we'll focus on anecdote to introduce herself as being part of the problem. She says, we Americans, I had this problem. I encountered this problem with napping. So this anecdote not only introduces the problem, but it establishes her as someone who is in a similar situation that we are, but has just recently learned a better way to think about naps, and she wants to teach us. She wants to teach us how to understand naps. And that's the persona, or what we'll call the ethos, the characteristic of the writer that she wants to present us with. And that's something we're going to take into our own writing too. We're not pointing fingers, we're not telling someone that they've created a problem. We're convincing them to see the problem that we've all been a part of, and then teaching them that there's a solution at hand. So that covers all 4 parts of the rhetorical situation. That's going to finish up our discussion of NAPS. We'll return to it to talk about some other skills in future videos where we're discussing other Holland essays. But for now, take these 2 things away. Style portfolio skills being bridged into the essay, and then also the rhetorical situation as a foundation for the essay. And we'll keep going from there. So until next time, enjoy the Barbara Holland essays and especially NAPS, and we'll talk soon.